Balance team.
And I'm Aislinn Hall. I am a systems designer on Live Balance.
Aislinn, great to have you back. And all the way from Albany, New York, Mr. Dan Tangway, welcome back to the stream.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Dan Tangway. I'm the design director for Live Services.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Dan. As you can all see, Season of Witchcraft is upon us. Huge shout out to our production team. We've got some absolutely disgusting heads that we bored from the Tree Whispers. You can't see on this guy yet. I might give him a spin later on, but the teeth on him are absolutely horrible. Yeah, without further ado, to give you a brief overview for the stream, we're going to walk you through the seasonal content, so Season of Witchcraft. Excited to get into it. Then we'll head over to some class and balance updates, give you a brief preview of some new uniques coming to the season. Should be pretty exciting. And then we'll have some system updates and get into some exciting features coming the Season of Witchcraft that have been much anticipated for a long time. Then stick around, we'll do a Q&A towards the tail end of the stream, and we'll get into all your questions. So I do have Tokenat, and we will be collecting questions throughout the stream for our devs to answer. But before we jump into Season of Witchcraft, we do want to cast ourselves all the way back to the start of December where we had the 2.1 PTR. Thank you to everyone who jumped into this PTR. There was a ton of content, and we did have some exciting features. Like, I gotta ask you, Aislinn, like, how did it feel to get the armory finally into
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for so long. I'm so glad it's finally here. The armory feels amazing to use. It's so great to finally have it in the game. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to try it yet, it's going to be a godsend in Season 7. You're going to love it. It's just such a useful tool, and we'll go more into the details later, but wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Charles, did you get any
Szanowanko, chyba
feedback
już się
on
poprzedstawiali, także można sobie obejrzeć.
From
Zapraszam.
the PTR, we got a lot of great feedback on balance and all the new content for classes, like the new uniques, new legendaries, all the tweaks and adjustments to skills. Your feedback's been invaluable, not only like feedback written up on social media or on our forums or elsewhere, but also just like in the raw data, the player data, our telemetry has been very helpful in making sure that this season and every season is as best as it can be when it actually launches.
Yeah, that's a great point, Charles. Like, one thing we did want to touch on is, even if you don't see your feedback represented throughout the stream, because we will be touching on different feedback across all the sections from our PTR, we do still internalize all that feedback and take it through and help, make decisions throughout future seasons. So all the feedback is very much appreciated and really does help inform that content. But yeah, there was a ton to chew on in the PTR. Like, we had all our witchcraft powers in there. Like, there's an absolute smattering of content. But very excited to throw it over to Dan Tangway. Can you let us know what players can expect in Season of Witchcraft?
Yeah, let's talk about the Season of the Witchcraft. There's a lot to cover at this point. You got a bigger chunk of it than you had in previous seasons in the PTR, but still we've got some surprises in store that we want to share with y'all. So let's get started. First off, the Season of Witchcraft, dozens of heads are missing from the Tree of Whispers. And so the tree is hell-bent and really just ticked off. It wants to find them. I mean, these heads were part of a bargain. The tree is all about keeping your word, and now that bargain is broken. So yeah, the tree's mad. Full stop. Now the witches have summoned you to the tree, and they're offering you a deal. If you can get those heads back for them, they'll offer you the secrets of witchcraft. So that's where we begin. And the first thing, we're going to have an all-new quest line. And that new quest line is going to be you unraveling the mystery of those missing heads. And while you're doing that, like I said, you're going to be earning wild witchcraft and occult gems. We have a new activity called Head Hunts, and that's going to allow you to pursue whispers, slay Head Rotten, which is the new enemies, the new family of enemies that we have this season, and find those missing heads. In addition to the Head Hunts, you're also going to have Root Holds. These are new micro dungeons that allow you to discover bonus Head Rotten and also their bosses. And then finally, we've got some updates to the season journey that we'll cover, including a new pet named Dorian, which is a pet raven. This is our first flying pet, so we're pretty excited about that. Let's talk about some of the powers. So witchcraft, at least as we're defining it this season, It allows its practitioners to call upon the power of the swamp to do their bidding. And there are 3 schools of magic within witchcraft. We've got Eldritch witchcraft, and that's uncanny magic that, is just weird and bizarre and very of the swamp. You've got psyche powers. These are powers of the mind and spirit. And we've got growth and decay, and that's magic that both heals and harms your enemies. Going to take a look at some of these in action. So first up, we're going to have Eldritch powers once we get our clip going. And right here, we're seeing that we've got Fire Bats, which is a classic power from the Witch Doctor that we brought back this season, paired up with Doom Orb. Next up, we've got some Psyche powers here. And we're using Vengeful Spirit, which is kind of hanging around you and zooming between enemies, and the Aura of Lament, where you see these psychic projections of hands come out of the ground and slow your enemies. And finally, we've got Growth and Decay magic. And you watch right there, your wolves got really big all of a sudden. That's Grow magic. And that's been paired up with the Poison Frog, which you see in the corner, wailing away on the head rotten there. So those are some good examples of the types of magics that you're going to be able to use in this season, and you'll start seeing them sprinkled all throughout the rest of the clips that we're about to show you. Next up, let's talk about the headhunts. So I said before the tree was really mad, right? Because it's missing its heads. And so what it's doing is actually calling out all new whispers, and it's just furiously searching for these heads. But it can't do it on its own, so when it calls out a particular zone, because it knows roughly where the heads are, it calls its agents to help it out, and you're one of the tree's agents, so you can go and solve some of those whispers and get rewarded for them. Now, the headhunts are special zone takeovers that complement the Hell Tides. So folks on the PTR called them Witch Tides. Sure, you can call them that. But the idea is that these aren't just replacing Hell Tides, they're there to supplement them in terms of what you can do in the overworld. Now, these are going to be swarming with Head Rotten, those enemies we talked about before. The Head Rotten are monsters that have fallen under the influence of the missing heads, and the heads have transformed them in really grotesque ways. Now, these headhunts, like I mentioned, are going to feature all new whispers mixed with some existing ones as well. Completing a whisper unlocks what's called an exposed root, and that gives you a chance of actually triggering what is a cocoon. And these uprooted cocoons have a chance of then spawning a head rotten boss. So every time you complete a whisper, you've got a chance at triggering a boss. And occasionally, a boss will spawn from one of these, and then everyone in the zone can work together to try and take down that boss. And if you're really lucky, that boss will have one of the missing heads associated with it. So let's take a look at some of this in action here. Now, first up, we're going to check out one of our new whispers. This is a Shepherd Whisper. This is allowing you to, guide some of these innocent wildlife in this area to safety. Very simple, but, the witches want to make sure that no one's harmed by the Head Rotten. Next up, we've got some villagers that are trapped in bramble in an entangled whisper. And so you're trying to defeat all the enemies around there in order to free the villager there. Following that, we're actually going to get a view of one of the exposed roots as it transforms into this uprooted cocoon. And so, much like some other open world boss fights, there's going to be some combat leading up to the boss spawning. And that first cocoon actually didn't have a boss in it, but you still got some rewards from it. So we're going to see if this second cocoon has a boss in it. So we're, continuing to clear Head Rotten, and indeed a boss does spawn. Now, unfortunately, it's not a boss with a missing head. This is a headless husk, but still, it's going to be pretty rewarding to defeat this. So hopefully everyone in the area realizes that, there's a boss in the air and they're going to come help you defeat this. And yeah, that is a good peek at what headhunts are going to be. But let's go back to the tree now, because I really want to take you through some of the steps on how to learn new witchcraft. So Let's talk about that. So the first thing that's really important when you want to learn new witchcraft is that you're always going to be earning Covenant's favor from completing whispers. And that's going to unlock new witchcraft at certain tiers of the Coven favor board. Now, additionally, as you're killing those head rotten that I showed you before, you're going to be earning Restless Rot. Now, Restless Rot is something that you can offer as proof of a kill to the altar to earn that new witchcraft. And then you can use it also to upgrade your witchcraft directly in your UI. One final note I want to make here is that we decided to use witchcraft and these seasonal powers as a way to help boost your alts. So that means that whenever you upgrade and unlock a piece of witchcraft, that's going to stay upgraded and unlocked for all your characters on your account for the rest of the season. So it's going to be a great leg up for, you know, trying new characters in the future. Well, let's take a look at some of this in action. All right, so here we are in the Tree of Whispers area, and we're looking at the Coven rep board. And we'll see right up here that on rank 7, you actually unlock some more witchcraft. So we're going to go over to our altar now. Now at the altar, we're going to take a look at a list of things that you haven't learned yet. And each of these costs Restless Rot to earn. And so you're going to learn Grow. And now Grow has appeared in your witchcraft inventory to the right. And you're also going to look at upgrading Abyssal Resonance. That was a bit of a mouthful. And we can upgrade it from rank 3 to 4 by just applying the Restless Rot directly. But headhunts aren't the only places that you're going to be able to find head rotten. Let's go, actually no, I'm skipping ahead. Let's talk about Forgotten Altars first. So there's a bit of a twist on earning some of your witchcraft. Not all the witchcraft that you can learn is actually known by the Witches of Hawazar, or the tree for that matter. Some of it has just been lost to the world. And so these take the form of lost powers that you can find on Forgotten Altars out in the dungeons of Sanctuary. So as you're adventuring through your dungeons, you will find some lost powers that you can't get anywhere else. And so it should be pretty exciting to stumble across one of these.
Czyli w lungach może być
Can't
też
remember if there's a clip or not here, so let's take a look. Yeah, there it is indeed. And so real quick, you know, going through a dungeon, you see a Forgotten Altar, you interact with it, and then a new power is unlocked. Now the cool thing about these is that if you find more altars, you can upgrade your powers by doing this, but you can also upgrade them through spending a premium price of Restless Rot. So you've got a couple options for upgrading these once you're able to find them. Now we're going to talk about the root holds, I think. So root holds. Root holds are micro dungeons, and so these micro dungeons are home to some of the head rotten and the head rotten bosses and the missing heads. They've gotten a little wise to what the tree's up to, so they're trying to hide underground. And so each of these contains a really concentrated population of head rotten and their rewards, and they require a new type of sigil called a Whispering Wood in order to access. And so these drop from whisper caches. So as you complete those whispers, you'll get more access to root holds, as well as silent chests, which actually are pretty common in the headhunt areas. So let's take a look at a root hold. First off, we're going to open our inventory, and in there is going to be a Whispering Wood. And we're just going to trigger that like we would any Nightmare dungeon. And then we're going to teleport right into our root hold. And I can take you through a little bit of that. All right, now we're in the root hold, and we're going to come upon a couple of interactions, actually 4. These are rites and ceremonies. These are interactions that allow you to increase the challenge in the root hold in order to get more rewards. And if it reminds you a little bit of Hell Breaches, well, it is pretty similar, but unlike those, you can actually do multiple rites and ceremonies instead of just one. And when you take those on, then all the enemies and all the interactions afterwards have been impacted. And so we're going to fight through some of the head rotten here. Like I said, root holds are a pretty good spot to get a concentrated dose of them. And you also get a number of guaranteed roots that you can try and uproot as well, which is great.
Czyli ogólnie stare lochy, tylko że z nowymi potworkami, nieźle.
We'll watch a little bit more of this, and then we'll culminate with a boss. one more battle first, but I'll say that each root hold is guaranteed to have a boss at the end, which is nice if you want to start really trying to grind to get your missing heads. Now let's take a look at the boss. Oh, well, this boss actually has a head, so that's pretty cool, because a lot of them don't. So we're going to kill that boss, and that boss is going to drop a missing head, and we're actually going to go take it back to the Tree of Whispers.
Czyli będą jeszcze jakieś bossy, które nie dropią tego, no cudowny po prostu. Pewnie szansa będzie, nie wiem, 1 na 50.
Now. So taking it back to the Tree of Whispers, we're going to talk to a witch, and we're going to be able, in return for giving her this head, craft an occult gem. And this gem, I think we're going to craft as an Elder Sigil, and we're going to be able to slot that into one of our rings. So let's do that right now. Here we go. And the Elder Sigil is not only going to provide us some defense, like you would get from your a diamond or skull that you've slotted into a ring or not a talisman. Yeah. But also
To nawet spoko, no tam naraz reski, armory, jeszcze jakieś tam odrobinka damage'u, no. Ale spodziewałem się czegoś więcej, tak szczerze.
it's going to give you some additional bonuses above and beyond that. But I'm dancing around it. What are occult gems? And so let's talk a little bit more about what occult gems are at this point. So occult gems are special socketables. And these socketables are going to really help you fine-tune your build after you have kind of a good foundation of witchcraft. Now they're crafted, like you saw, using the missing heads returned to the Tree of Whispers. They can only be slotted in jewelry slots, though, your talismans and your rings. And
Mam wrażenie, że już gdzieś to widziałem.
they only last for the season. Now, when items transfer to the Eternal Realm, they disappear forever. And they build on top of your witchcraft powers. You know, they're going to provide item and skill bonuses for certain witchcraft combinations. So, if you really like the Piranado, for example, you're going to be investing in Hex and Aura. And if you invest a lot in Hex and Aura, it probably is wise to try and find an occult gem that also builds on top of those things as well. And that'll really allow you to fully enhance your build while you're entering and then playing through the end game. All right, so we've talked a bit about occult gems.
Dobra, weźcie jeszcze pokażcie tutaj, co to tam było dokładnie. Agility Corps Mastery, 25% więcej. Okay.
Giving her this head.
Common Psycho Witch Powers, 25%.
Craft an occult gem.
Increased Overpower.
And this
Summon, 15%.
gem, I think we're going to craft as
Growth in Decay,
an Elder
35%.
Sigil. And we're going
Aura. Kiedy masz aurę, dotki 50% szybciej tikają.
to be able to slot that in.
Common Eldritch. No takie średnie to bym powiedział.
Gems. While we were putting all this together for Season of Witchcraft, we also saw some really good opportunities to improve the quality of life of the Whisper Loop. So let's talk through a couple of those right now. First off, we've updated the town area around the Tree of Whispers. Previously, it was kind of small. It was, home to a number of outcasts, and that group of outcasts has grown this season. Not only do the witches make home there, but there's a couple of new people there that provide additional services. And we've also actually put an extra armory in there too, so you can make use of that. Now, while you're out in headhunts, we've also added a new feature called the Raven of the Tree. And this allows you to basically make submissions to the Tree of Whispers, turn in your Grim Favor in order to be able to get a cache immediately on the spot instead of having to return to the Tree of Whispers itself. And it's convenient, sure, but it also allows you to really stay in the moment. If, for example, a new boss is triggered or something like that from an uprooted cocoon, and you want to join in that, you go over to the Raven of the Tree, turn in your Grim Favor, and then get right back into the battle again. And finally, we've got some ancestral caches. These are a new type of cache.
Tak szczerze to więcej o tym gadają niż tego kontentu tam jest, no. To już wszystko było, no.
That we've added that guarantees an ancestral item. And we wanted to make sure just that the Whisper Loop had, full range of items that it could drop. So we're pretty excited to be able to share all of these with you, as well as some new improvements to the season journey. So let's talk through those real quick. Now, with the season journey, we realized that a lot of casual players use the season journey as a way to figure out what to do next. And we also realized that our early chapters hadn't really been helping the casual players as much as we would have liked. So we've reworked a lot of those early objectives to help casual players more, because we want to see more of them get into the end game. Now, the later chapters, though, didn't feel especially challenging to us, so we've tried to improve that. Chapter 7 especially, we've reworked to really provide some more aspirational goals for players. And this is something that we're just going to continue working on in future seasons as well. Now, we've asked you to do a lot more in terms of the objectives, so we wanted to make sure we gave you a really great reward too. So this is where you can earn Dorian the Raven.
Niesamowita to jest nagroda, nie zapomnę jej nigdy.
And like I said at the top, this is our first flying pet, which is pretty awesome. So let's take a look. I am pretty excited to get Dorian. I have a feeling that flying pets are pretty much going to be my new favorite moving forward. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this one.
Oh yeah, Dorian's going to be wonderful. Ravens love shinies, so him picking up your gold is just perfect.
Oh yeah, right on theme.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. And finally, I think I'd like to chat through some PTR stuff. So Charles is going to cover a lot of the updates we made to the powers and occult gems, because that's what his team focused on. But the seasons team really focused on some of the headhunts and systems and took a lot of your feedback and really tried to improve the game prior to launch. So here's a couple things that I just want to cover real quick. First off, the multiplayer headhunts felt overwhelming for a lot of new players. And so we've done a number of things to tweak the headhunts to make sure that they don't feel as overwhelming. First off, we've made some targeted reductions to the number of elites. There were just a lot of elites on the PTR. And so you're still going to have a lot of monster density as you're fighting through these headhunts.
Czyli kolejne zmiany, żeby pomóc nubczakom i nieogarom. Elegancko.
But hopefully this will make things a little more manageable, because we also had to reduce the number of, not the number of bosses, but the frequency at which they spawned. We've got bad luck protection to make sure that, you will eventually see a boss spawn as you're playing through a headhunt, but we had to dial that down just a little bit because they were coming up quite often. We've also reduced the number of low-value item drops. We had heard from a number of you that you were spending more time picking up a lot of items that really weren't good instead of actually battling the head rotten, which is what we want you to do. We've also reduced the number of active headhunt zones from 5 to 4. And then finally, we're going to add a new HUD element. A number of folks had pointed out that it wasn't really clear that completing Whispers was the thing that actually triggered the roots and then the cocoons. And so we've got a HUD element that will definitely illustrate that better. Unfortunately, that's not going to come till release 2.1.1, which is going to be roughly 2 weeks out from launch. Now, head rotten, especially bosses, were not challenging enough. So that's another thing that we've
Tutaj generalnie wszystko jest we're not challenging enough, co? O czym my w ogóle mówimy? To jest, gierka jest tak prosta i jeszcze to wszystko ułatwiają.
Look to address. We've increased the head rot and barrier effect. Previously, it was around half health. We've made that full health now. And we gave the head rot a very small percentage of damage reduction as well. We've given you a lot of cool new powers in form of Witchcraft to play with. We want to make sure the head rotten serve as a good challenge for you as you're building out your Witchcraft powers. Next up, head rotten bosses were just not rewarding enough across the board, so we've increased their rewards to a level that's closer to a Blood Maiden than what they were previously. And then finally, some players didn't quite understand how to earn and upgrade Witchcraft, so we made some changes to help with that. Each altar is going to contain the same inventory now instead of having unique inventories. And that way you don't need to try and figure out which altar you need to go to in order to learn something. And we've also rewritten a lot of the tooltip descriptions to make sure that we're very clear about where you can go to get things. But yeah, I think that covers it for PTR learnings. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think I'll pass it back to Irvine.
No, I think you covered all of it, Dan. That was incredible. That was an absolute ton of content. There's just so much to dive into with this season. Like, I think I can speak for everyone. Like, between root holes, witchcraft powers, occult gems, like there's just so much in the mix to dive in and get used to, and like it all kind of comes back to headhunts that you can kind of use as a zone to get through, like to get into all the content, which is super exciting. So Dan, thanks so much for walking us through all of that. I know we've got more details coming out in our patch notes following the stream, and we do have some of those witchcraft powers already existing in our blog. So if you want more information on those, you can check those out. But Dan's going to stick around because we will be bringing Dan back for our Q&A section at the end of the stream. So if you have any questions, on Dorian the Raven or on witchcraft powers, occult gems, or anything to do with Season of Witchcraft, please drop those in chat and we'll grab them throughout the stream. But for all of you who are kind of theory crafting and build crafting and thinking about like, okay, what's my playstyle going to be for Season of Witchcraft? You're probably already thinking about the different occult gems, the different witchcraft powers, but to finish off that equation, of course, you need to get all the balance updates for the season.
Yeah.
So Charles, can you take us through what's coming?
Of course, yeah. I'd love to talk about how you're going to attack these head rotten. Like, what is your build going to look like, and what are some of the new uniques and legendaries that you're going to get to play with in this season. First, before getting into each individual class, I want to talk about some of our broader initiatives on the class design side that kind of affect every class in some way. Specifically, wanted to talk about how we did some ultimate skill updates in this patch. For ultimate skills, we're now we're able to get skill ranks on them, starting in Season 6, the previous season. But now once you get them up to rank 5, you're going to get a special bonus. And we found these to be really flashy and fun on the PTR. People love playing with ultimates, and you get to cast them more often. They've got more effects. They had some scaling to ways to scale their damage with these rank 5 bonuses sometimes. We did find that some of those exact scaling numbers were a little on the higher side. They were a little bit more powerful and kind of crowding out non-ultimate builds. Right. We love that people are playing these and we want them to be powerful, but there are certainly some times when it's a little too much and it feels like you can't play anything else. Right. So we are taking a pass across the board on some of those ultimate scalings to bring them down just a little bit, but we still expect them to be very powerful and very fun. Secondarily, we've got the summons update. This was a big pass across summons from Necromancer, their skeletons, Druid companions, Rogue Shadow Clone is a big one.
Oh, yes.
And then even Sorcerer Conjurations and the Barbarian Ancients even. So for the summons update, without getting too technical into it, essentially what happened was all of the damage that your summons do is going to be attributed to the player and not to a separate entity that's kind of separated from you. And what that ultimately means is that all of those summons will now inherit your damage bonuses more consistently. Anything that says you deal increased damage affects your summons. Just out of the box, it works for everything.
No to w sumie ciekawe, to buildziki różne z petami w końcu może coś podziałają. Oprócz tego nekro nieszczęsnego.
It's just more consistent interaction across the board. Any of your lucky hit effects that says, hey, you've got a lucky hit chance to stun an enemy. All of the damage from your summons also can trigger that now. And this is great for consistency across the board. Previously, it was sometimes inconsistent what would work with what. And I'm particularly excited about Shadow Clone, as we'll talk about in the Rogue section coming up. But that was one that, historically really never hit the mark for an ultimate skill. And with this new update, we think Shadow Clone is going to really live up to the promise of like really duplicating your actions in a way that feels meaningful and does tons of damage exactly like you'd expect it to.
Oh, it's going to be very powerful. I'm looking forward to it. And summons truly are just an extension of you now and all of your power. They're inheriting all of that properly, and they're going to blast. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. The one last kind of
To nieźle, że po ponad roku to odkryli, a nie wcześniej.
Big picture item that we took away from the PTR was about crowd control effects. We noticed that there is a whole lot of what I'd call incidental crowd control effects, things that happen from lucky hits or procs, specifically from the Worldly Fortune Tempering Manual that gives you lucky hit, chance to stun, or chance to freeze an enemy, as well as particularly from the Fist of Fate unique item. We found that it was often the most common way to build your character in the late game was to really stack up these effects, and then you're just applying a lot of crowd control on this lucky hit cadence rather than actively pressing crowd control buttons or really opting into it. And we do
Tylko tyle potem nawijają. Na końcu jest napisane no change is in season 7.
think that once it gets to a certain point of that, it can make our combat less engaging, where enemies just randomly get stunned or frozen without you really having too much input into that. But then it also makes it very frustrating when you don't lucky hit and an enemy hits you that you expected to have got hit with this. So we're looking to potentially address that in a future season or future updates. We don't have any changes regarding the crowd control here in Season 7, but it's one of those examples of the learnings that we're going to take forward to future seasons and potentially look at improving this so that we can make our combat feel that much more engaging and actually get a little bit of back and forth between you and the enemies a bit more than there currently is, especially in the hyper late game situation when your characters are really maxed out. So with that in mind, let's get on to some of the individual classes, starting with the Barbarian. So the Barbarian on the Season 7 PTR was performing quite solidly. We were pretty happy with where Barbarian landed. We are really excited about Hammer of the Ancients and this Earthquake build with the new unique, which we'll show in a moment. We do think the Hammer of the Ancients part of that maybe could use a little bit more numerical buffs, so we threw some buffs there, as well as to Whirlwind. That build was definitely falling a bit behind some of the other builds. But on the whole, we definitely expect Barbarian to be really powerful and a strong option going forward. Let's take a look at that new unique item, the Mantle of Mountain's Fury.
Oh, yes.
This empowers your Hammer of the Ancients to cause a seismic line, and if that line...
Dobra, nowe itemki, co my tu mamy? Chodka. Trzęsienie ziemi po chodce. Armor, chota. I sejsmiczne, co nawet spoko.
Hits an earthquake, it's going to explode that earthquake for massive damage. A big fire explosion. Looks so sweet.
It's very intense.
Tylko niech mi ktoś powie, czemu te kolorki są takie jaskrawe. Też to jak Diablo trójeczka wygląda, no.
For massive damage. A big fire explosion. Looks so sweet.
It's very intense.
Very powerful, and right on the Barbarian fantasy of just hitting things with big weapons, making earthquakes, making explosions.
Yeah, that's ludicrous.
I love it because the flavor of Hammer of the Ancients is hit the ground and smash it. And this is just taking that and amplifying it by 100 times.
Oh, absolutely. So really excited for this and to see how this build performs in Season of the Witchcraft. Up next, we've got the Sorceress. So the Sorceress, kind of in contrast to the Barbarian, was by far the weakest class on the PTR. No getting around that. We made some adjustments going into this season that we think maybe overshot and brought Sorceress down a little further than we'd be happy with. Particularly changes to Conjuration and Burning bonuses. We're happy with how that affected build variety, but the overall power level suffered. So with that in mind, we're going to do a lot of buffs mainly on the passive effects for the class to really kind of bring all of their numbers up by just a little bit across the board. I specifically wanted to call out our changes to Searing Heat and Icefall. These are legendary Paragon nodes that previously were very build specific, like you would only use Searing Heat in a burning build. We've made some tweaks to it where it's still good in a burning build, it's probably better, but it also has some applications across all builds and all damage types. So these will just be a little bit more generically applicable, but still very good for the build that they were initially intended for.
Right.
With that in mind, I want to show some of the updates to Firebolt enchantment. This is one that we had reworked as part of those burning changes, and we thought even on the PTR it wasn't quite hitting the mark. So now, dealing burning damage, if you take this enchantment, will have a chance to heal you for some of your maximal life, which it already did, and it also unleashes a bonus Firebolt onto a nearby enemy. So that you can see in this clip here, when enemies are burning, they're just randomly firing off some extra Firebolts to nearby enemies that can really help to spread that burning and take down big packs.
Yeah, it's its own little chain firebolt now.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, wanted to highlight some of the new uniques coming in this season. So Sorceress has 2, the Strike of Stormhorn.
Ball Lightning, dobra. Podwójna szansa. Super Ball. No to ciekawe. Crit, speed. Plusy. To może być nawet spoko.
Is a unique focus that's going to modify your ball lightning to give you super ball lightnings sometimes. So it'll always fire out straight forward and it's a little bit faster. And occasionally you'll get the super ball lightning, which will explode for a big chunk of damage at the end in a cone shape and also stun enemies.
It's kind of like going bowling.
Exactly. You get a strike. Stormhorn. Exactly. Alternatively, you could take the other unique focus that is being introduced in this season, Okun's Catalyst, to kind of play Ball Lightning the way it's often been played in the past with this gravitational effect. We've done some reworks on the gravitational aspect that previously did that, and now it will be in this unique, where the Ball Lightnings will orbit around you and do damage to enemies who are close by. You really want to get close and in that action, whereas with Strike of Stormhorn, you're playing at a little bit more of a range.
Right.
We really like how we're doing these like paired uniques where you kind of have a choice. Hey, what focus do I want to use? They are going to be mutually exclusive. You can't have both.
But
that's because they're so different and they're different play styles. But we think putting these into different uniques gives us the space to really live up this fantasy, you know, give you lots of affixes and bonuses that make it as powerful and really to help enhance that fantasy that we're hoping to play.
Yeah, and Okun's Catalyst really gives you that like transformative ball lightning experience, which is like the orbiting ball lightning. But Strike of Stormhorn kind of just amplifies the original ball lightning experience, which is just shoot it out and have it explode in this magnificent blast of energy. So I love that we are allowing both of those to shine.
Absolutely. All right, on to the next class. We've got the Druid. So the Druid on the PTR did have one bugged build. One of their legendary Paragon nodes was causing their damage to scale way higher than we intended. Occasionally would even kind of break the game and go, you'd see negative damage numbers. Definitely not intended. We fixed that bug. But despite that, we think Druid on the whole was still in a solid place even without that. We've made a number of adjustments and reworked the blurred beast aspect. This is one that we had tried out a rework on the PTR, and it wasn't quite hitting the mark. It wasn't quite as engaging to play as we had hoped, so we did a rework to it to help improve the shred builds for Werewolf. Additionally, I wanted to highlight some of the Spirit Boon updates. These were the Druid class mechanic. You get these Spirit Boons. Historically, they've been a little bit falling behind, and we've done some big buffs here to make them really powerful. I especially like the Gift of the Stag. It's my favorite one. It gives you passive spirit generation every second.
Yeah.
That really helps smooth out the Druid's early game in particular when they're struggling to really get their resource engine online. They were definitely one of the slower classes early on, and I think this update to the Spirit Boons is going to really help that.
Yeah, totally. And that's just such a great example of how the update is going to help them because Druids have typically struggled with generating spirit in the early game, and so having more access to that's going to help a ton.
Yeah. Let's take a look at a clip of the new Blurred Beast rework. So on the PTR, it would do some bonus strikes based on how far you traveled. Now your shred will just always have a chance to land additional strikes, but it's going to roll that randomness 4 times. So if you get real lucky on your shred, you're going to hit so many times on that target, which really helps amplify the fantasy of werewolf striking fast, striking multiple times.
Yeah, this aspect is super fun to play, and I absolutely love what the art team did with this, combining the mechanics of, that feedback on the extra strikes with the actual additional slashes going out. It looks awesome.
Looks awesome.
All right, on to the Rogue.
Niesamowita historia.
So the Rogue was a very strong class on the PTR. We thought it was in a great spot, very powerful, particularly with Rain of Arrows.
Yeah.
Rain of Arrow builds were already a pretty common, pretty powerful build before the season, but with the new changes to introduce the additional scaling damage on it, they were just absolutely top.
Yeah.
So I will say that, of course, as part of addressing the ultimate changes across the board, we did bring down the scaling a little bit on Rain of Arrows, but we do think that it's still going to be a very compelling choice. Rogue and ultimate skills are going to be just fine going forward into the season.
It'll be good.
Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about Shadow Clone. I know I teased that earlier with the summons update. Shadow Clone was probably one of the biggest updates in this season to really make sure it worked with all of your damage, all of your bonus effects, all of your procs, and especially work with a lot of your legendary effects that modify your skills. So previously, if you had, say, if you're using Flurry and you had the aspect of encircling blades that would cause Flurry to hit all around you, your Shadow Clone wouldn't know that you have that. It would just kind of attack like a normal Flurry. With this update, it'll now copy all of your legendary effects. Just as if you were casting the skill yourself, it comes from the Shadow Clone, and it works with all of those modifications.
Broken.
And that's huge.
Absolutely.
It's a lot more damage.
Yeah. I really think, I love Rain of Arrows, I love Death Trap, the other ultimate options on Rogue, but I think Shadow Clone, it's its time to shine this season.
Shadow Clone, hit the gym.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a clip of the new Shadow Clone in action. So here we've got the aspect of Encircling Blades, the Flurry that I had mentioned earlier.
Oh, baby.
Doing the big AoE around both you and the Shadow Clone. Additionally, with twisting blades, when they come back and orbit around you, that Blade Dancer's aspect, they'll also come back and orbit around your Shadow Clone.
Wonderful.
Charles, you're going to make me do a Rogue Flurry Shadow Clone build this season.
Yeah, it should be great. Let me know how that works out. All right, on to the Necromancer. So the Necromancer was probably the class that benefited most from a bug with the scaling of the ultimates. As I mentioned, there were some scaling with different stats.
Yeah.
And whenever there was 2 stats involved, particularly on Army of the Dead, then it was actually increasing the damage far higher than we had intended. So we have fixed that bug, and we've addressed it. But with that in mind, Necromancer is definitely the biggest benefit of the summons update. I know Shadow Clone is great, but Necromancer is the summons class.
Of course.
So they have by far the most. All of their skeletons and their golems are now going to much more consistently interact with your lucky hit procs, your bonus damage effects. Anything that increases your damage output will also increase the damage output of your minions. And on the whole, we really expect that.
No dobra, ale już był sezon, w którym Necro był panem świata, no i na co to komu znowu, no.
Summon Necromancer to be at its peak going into this season.
Amazing.
So channeling my Adam Jackson here. Minion stomps high.
Minion stomps are absolutely going up this season, for sure. Additionally, we've got some new, just like the Sorcerer, we've got 2 uniques that talk to Bloodwave, the unique, or the legendary, the ultimate skill. Right. We've got 2 different unique pants that can enhance your Bloodwave in different ways. Let's take a look at a clip of those. So first we've got...
Dobra, co my tu mamy? Casting Bone Spear redukuje, dobra, 2 sekundy. Overpower Life. Czyli fala jest też Bone Skillem. A Bone Spear jest jednocześnie krewkowy. To już śmieszne.
Indriel's Memory, and this is going to be kind of your standard blood wave. It still flies forward, but when it hits the end, it's going to trap enemies in a bone prison. Additionally, it modifies your Bone Spear to also become a blood skill, now you've got a blood spear.
Right.
And with the inherent affix here, casting your bone spear reduces blood wave's cooldown. It really promotes the synergy between blood and bone, and you're going to get a nice loop of, hey, cast the blood wave, and then trap them in that bone prison. Hey, that's perfect for lining up this blood spear. And by casting that, you're going to reduce the cooldown in a blood wave to be ready for the next pack.
Right. This unique alone really makes blood and bone, like a blood and bone build, come alive, which is cool.
Absolutely. The alternative, you could use Kasemi's Legacy. This one changes blood wave. Instead of one wave going forward, you've got two crashing in from both sides. And it's going to pull enemies towards you. And when it hits, it's going to do it.
To dobre może być. Fortifies, dobra. 85%? Co jest? Alt damage. Damage reduction. Podwójny damage, cooldown reduction. To kurde, to może być sztosik. Każda fala 10% więcej. Do 300%?
A big pulse of damage in the middle.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. It's very transformational in the way you think about it, the way you position it, and what your use case is, right? It's not for pushing enemies away. It's for bringing them in close and really wanting to be in the thick of combat there.
Yeah, it really makes me think about like a more melee or close range centered necro build, whereas Indira's Memory makes me think about a ranged necro build.
Absolutely. This is, pulls them in, perfect for setting up a blood surge to hit enemies right around you. So definitely looking forward to see, a blood wave being played in a number of different ways in this new season.
Zasięg, jaki to będzie miało.
And finally, we've got the Spiritborn, of course, our newest class, which is very strong. It was very strong in the previous season, or what's currently live on Season 6. We did some adjustments to some of the bugged interactions that was causing their damage to scale way higher than intended, as well as a handful of nerfs across the board going into the PTR. That being said, on the PTR, we still found them to be a very strong class, arguably still the strongest. So with that in mind, we didn't really make too many changes. We really wanted to make sure that we brought some of the other classes up to that level, and we think the Spiritborn is in a good place. So there was actually very minimal amount of numerical adjustments to Spiritborn going into this season. With that in mind, I wanted to highlight the Razor Wings build. There's a new unique item, the Sunstained War Crozier, as well as a new aspect, the aspect of Endless Talons. That's going to really help enhance this Razor Wing build. I think we've got a clip of that.
Dobra, poka klipa.
So we've got the Sunstained War Crozier, and...
Co to robi? Text life, potency, focus. Focus skill. Większa damage potential. 100%. Okay.
That's going to enhance all of your focus skills. They automatically benefit from all of their upgrades. You don't need to invest skill points in there. And by casting it, you increase the damage of your potency skill, your Razor Wings, whenever you're casting focus skills.
As Razor Wings is a potency skill.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to seeing how this Razor Wings was maybe a little bit underrepresented on the current season, and we're really looking forward to this unique and the new legendary to really bring it up to par. All right, so that covers our class updates, and once again, I kind of went at high level for each class because the actual number of changes were rather, there's a lot more that we didn't want to just throw up all the numbers for every single class. So I kind of painted a broad picture. Make sure you check out the patch notes for the actual changes that should be coming right after the stream.
Yeah, the patch notes are massive, so buckle up for those. They're quite long. If we
sure.
went through those, that would be like a 4-hour stream. So,
Right.
But dive into those post-stream, absolutely.
Luckily for some of the occult gems and witch power updates, we could fit kind of all the changes onto the side, so we're going to go into a bit more numbers here. So let's take a look at what we made updates on the occult gems. I think on the whole, occult gems were pretty strong. They were really hitting that mark of they were appealing to put into your jewelry, the rings and the amulet. And they give you a lot of defense and a lot of other bonuses. Some of the bonuses maybe a touch high, so we brought some of them down by just a little bit.
Right.
We still think on the whole these are going to be abilities with. There is new witch power that we did not have on the TT. Guys.
Yep.
So yeah, on the whole, we think witch powers were pretty good. I love how flashy they are. And additional new witch power that we did not have on the PTR.
yes.
Yes. We've got the
Nowy
Force
moc.
of Will. Now this is a psyche witch power that empowers your overpowers. When you kill an enemy, your next overpower is going to gain some increased damage up to a maximum. And if you rank it up to at least rank 4, it'll empower your next 2 overpowers.
Excellent.
This was one that we were not able to
To
get
też
out on the
pod
PTR in
neka
time.
grać
It had
dobre będzie.
some issues, but it was being in development. But for the actual season launch, we're going to have this out there and
100%
available.
więcej.
We know it kind of really rounds out the roster of which powers that were available.
Yep.
We had one less psyche power than the others. This is the last one. And we didn't really have too much support in there for overpower builds, and now we do.
Voila.
So really excited about this one and help to empower overpower. All right, so I think that wraps up all of our balance changes. Once again, check out the patch notes for the exact details. But hope this, gets your minds turning for build crafting for next week when the season launches.
Yeah, there is absolutely a ton to chew on. Like, I went into the stream absolutely thinking I was going to roll Spiritborn again, and now I'm thinking I'm going to have to go Barb or Shadowclone Rogue. Like,
Those are
yeah.
so sweet.
I've got my decisions cut out for me, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And with the armory, you're going to be able to pick, one class and a bunch of builds from all of them.
Aislinn, I think what better thing to get into now than tell us about the armory.
Oh, yeah, I would love to.
No to.
Yeah, so
jest lepsze
for those
niż
who don't know, the
armorowy
armory
z
is a tool that you can
Diablo
use
3.
to basically save a loadout that you've constructed. So you're going to be able to save your skills that you've picked. You're going to be able to save the equipment you've used. You're going to be able to save the Paragon points you've put in.
pisze,
And you're going
nareszcie.
to be able to imprint it onto one of these slots in the armor you see on the left here in this image. Like this this character has Crush Hand, Touch of Death, or Touch Set, Quill, Razor Wings, and Payback. So, this is a Spiritborn that has saved a bunch of different builds there. It's really wonderful because, if you want to try a different build, like if you want to try Touch of Death, but you've spent a really long time working on Crushing Hand, you don't have to worry about changing all of that manually anymore with the armory. You can just do it automatically. Once you've created that build, you save it, and then you can swap to it whenever you want.
Miło.
These loadout slots are also character bound. So, you make a Spiritborn and then you decide you later want to swap to a Necro or, whatever. You're going to be able to ensure that you have a lot of variety to play in each character class. Another thing about loadouts is that they don't cost gold to change, so you're not going to have a bunch of significant gold overhead when you're actually swapping these, so you don't have to worry about that at all, which is very nice. The armory can be accessed through a bunch of different places in Sanctuary as well, including major cities, the Dark Citadel, the Tree of Whispers, of course, which is a major focal point of Season 7,
czyli w
and
głównych
training areas,
miastach
so that if you're trying to test certain things, you can really easily make adjustments without having to, spend a lot of time on that. And finally, we've got a few PTR updates where we gathered feedback from the PTR. We have improved the button clarity from the PTR. If you see in the image the little highlighted white box section, that should be more clear than it was in, your Eternal Realm Paragon level. So if you earn a bunch of Paragon XP in Season 6, and then Season 6 ends, all of that Paragon XP is going to be added to your Eternal Paragon level, which is going to make reaching Paragon level 300 a lot more attainable for a lot of folks on the Eternal Realm, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you just get progress every season over season on your Eternal Realm Paragon to make sure you can.
It's kind of like a window into how much you've played the game and how much effort you've. That doesn't affect the actual unique power roll itself in any way. So it was possible to find, for example, a 3 or 4 greater affix unique, but then the actual power roll itself min-rolled. And that could feel pretty deflating.
Oh, yeah.
Because you would get really excited that you found a unique that you wanted that had all the GAs, and then you look and it doesn't actually feel very usable because the power roll itself was very low. We're changing.
Czyli im więcej gwiazdek, tym będzie lepszy. W skrócie, co tu więcej gadać, elegancko nawet.
This in Season 7. So now the power roll floor changes based on the number of greater affixes that the unique has. So the more greater affixes it has, the higher guaranteed roll on the unique power you're going to get. So when you do see that 3 or 4 greater affix unique you want, it's going to absolutely slap, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That was always a little bit of a frustrating experience when you get really excited for an item drop, but then you're like, well, is it really better than what I currently have? You had to stop and think about that based on the affixes and the unique power roll. But now If you get a 3 or 4 GA, hey, you know it's going to be powerful. It may not be guaranteed to be the best one, but it's going to be one of the more powerful roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And next up, we have some other ancestral item changes. So something you may have noticed if you were playing a lot of Season 6 is that ancestral items are the only ones that can have the top aspect rolls. And what that meant was that those ancestral items were still rolling randomly. So like, let's just say for the sake of argument that a non-ancestral item with an aspect could roll up to rank 8 on that aspect. But then the ancestral version could roll up to rank 11. That ancestral item was still randomly, like totally randomly rolling among all the different ranks. And that made it seem really, 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 what didn't seem, it was very rare to find the top end of these aspect rolls, which actually wasn't the case in previous seasons. And we were all feeling that in Season 6. And for the completionists out there and the people who want to make sure that they have the best version of the aspects that they can, we wanted to make sure that we changed that. So now when you find these ancestral items, they are going to gravitate more towards the top end of those aspect rolls, and it should be much easier to actually fill out your collection of aspects than it was before in Season 6. And then as just a totally separate but wonderful thing, we were working on like how often ancestral items should actually drop as a baseline, and we've just bumped that up in Season 7. So you should, in general, find more ancestral items than you did before. And this is like something that feels very small, but has a big impact on the season as a whole. So that should feel a lot better in Season 7 as well. And finally, something else that we were noticing in Season 6 was that people were finding tons and tons of gem fragments and sometimes even capping out their gem fragments if you played enough. And this problem was exacerbated in Season 6, and we want to make sure that you have something to do with those gem fragments. So we created a gem fragment conversion at the Jewel Crafter. So we have a little clip to just show what that looks like here. So we're in Zarbinzet as a sorcerer, and we're next to the jeweler. We're going to talk to them. There's a little tab where you can go to jewelry crafting. And once you're in the late game and you've already crafted all your grand gems, and you don't actually have much to do with your gem fragments anymore, now you can just directly convert them into jewelry. So you can craft rings and you can craft amulets, and it will give you a little cache that will have a randomly rolled item. And this is just, again, it's a nice dump, basically, once you want to just, once you finish all your grand gems and you just want to find some extra gear. And these can roll as ancestral items, which is wonderful. And amulets and rings can, they have a wide range of potentially useful stats, and so being able to just roll those more is really nice because you can actually like target farm the things you need.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Really excited for that.
Yep, for sure. And finally, we have some kind of more quality of life centered or early game updates that should be really nice going forward season over season. So now that we're in Season 7 of Diablo 4, it's possible that you may have made a character of any given class, and you might be doing it again. And it's not always the most fun to go through the same content over and over. And so because of that, we wanted to make sure that you didn't actually have to do your class quest to unlock your class mechanic every single time you make a new character. So for example, if you made a sorcerer and you unlocked enchantments previously, you're not actually going to have to do that again. So when you hit level 15 on a new sorcerer in any realm, you're immediately going to unlock an enchantment slot because the game knows that you already did that before. New themed goodie bags. So they come from a variety of sources. You're going to get an archetype cache when you complete the class quest. So we have a level 15 sorcerer here who's just going to go and do their class quest, which is the Legacy of the Magi over here. Items and a tempering manual that are relevant to a specific theme of any given class. And so I'm glad we have sorcerer here because the sorcerer themes are very straightforward. For example, pyromancy or fire is one of the themes in sorcerer. So here we see we have a pyromancy cache that we got from completing the class quest. We're going to open it up. It's got 2 legendary items, a tempering manual, and some extra materials like bundled herbs and angel breath, and etc. Because it was a pyromancy cache, it came with a utility and a more offensive-focused legendary that are related to being a pyromancy sorcerer. It also came with a pyromancy-related tempering manual. So that really helps you get started on your journey as like a fire sorcerer. So if you find something like that, you're right out of the gate, level 15, you're gonna get a big jump in power, and you're gonna be able to dive into like what it means to be a fire sorcerer pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think what I really like about this change is that, you know, if you're just playing a new character, you're in the flow, you're doing the headhunts, you're leveling up, you hit level 15, right? You think, oh, now I got to go do this quest, otherwise I'm missing out on power. And sometimes, you know, you're in that flow. You don't want to stop and shift gears and go do that class quest. You now can do it on your own time, right?
Yeah.
You can instantly unlock that power from the class mechanic.
Yep.
And then whenever you get a chance, whenever you think, hey, I want to go do this quest, you can go do it and then feel rewarded for getting a nice archetype cache that really maybe pushes you in a certain direction if you're unsure of how you want to build your character and help to enhance, you know, the pyromancy, like you mentioned.
Yep.
That it gives you this optional, you know, power boost in a certain direction.
We wanted to make sure that it like wasn't worthless if you had already done it a lot. We wanted to make sure that there was still something.
Changes.
Yeah, I can talk about that. We are currently
powiedzenia.
planning to have a mid-season balance patch like we do every season. I just want to reiterate some of the philosophy around mid-season patches as well. For our mid-season patches, we're mainly looking at taking the data from when the season launches. So honestly, we haven't started looking at the mid-season patch at all because it's so heavily driven by what actually happens when the season launches. What builds are performing well, what builds are not performing well. If there's anything that is bugged or broken to the point where, you know, it's trivializing the game, that might be something we look at. In general, for mid-season patches that happen, well, in the middle of the season, we're primarily looking to bring up the underperformers or fix issues of interactions that maybe aren't quite seeing the spotlight that we were expecting them to. We're not really looking to take the top builds and nerf them.
Right.
Because we know players have already had time to invest in their characters. They've got the gear, they've leveled it up, they've you know, read build guides like, hey, how do I make this character? And we feel like if we're taking those down in the middle of a season, that really does a disservice to players that, you know, you are afraid of occasionally pop up. Spiritborn was a very powerful class. Like no getting around it. It was definitely stronger than the other classes. We know launch a brand new season.
Really important to us that we have a very targeted approach to systemic changes in mid-season patches. We want to make sure that we are gathering as much data as possible and as much information as we can to ensure that any tweaks we make aren't going to cause waves or changes that we weren't expecting or are undesirable. So we really want to gather as much like telemetry and data as possible from like how people are actually experiencing the season, and then kind of patch those pain points that people that we all find together, and we want to wait to make sure that we're doing it right. So we really want to know how people are going to be playing Season of the Witchcraft, and then we'll basically figure out what needs to happen and change from there.
Yeah, and that's why so much of the feedback from PTR, or even just throughout the regular seasons, all the feedback, we really do listen to it, and it's so important to us to make sure that we can make Diablo 4 as best as we possibly can. It's really critical that we get that feedback and we're able to iterate on that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. That is a super thorough answer for the mid-season patch.
Yes.
I mean, like I'll take all the information you got, so that's fantastic. This one's probably for you, Aislinn, from, oh boy, okay, bear with me here. Papsyrup Sagan, do the class quest caches scale to the level when they're opened?
Oh, yes, they absolutely do. So you can get it early or you can get it later. But the archetype caches that you find in the class quest aren't actually the only place you can find archetype caches. You're going to be able to get more from the season journey and other sources as well. So they're not exactly like a super finite supply. So you don't have to think too hard about like exactly when you should be opening them. The class quest is just one among many sources that you can earn an archetype cache.
You don't have to like sit on it throughout the whole season to be like, all right, when am I going to pop this thing?
Yeah.
And nice to have some extra goodies as you're on your way to get Dorian the Raven.
Of course.
That.
Because we know that's the most important thing.
Dorian.
I mean, I don't want to say, but Dorian's pretty cool. Also, on a similar thread, the Collector KC asks, is the class quest unlock retroactive as of right now or only after we complete it this season?
Yeah, so it's retroactive. So as long as you've completed, you've done the sorcerer quest before on a sorcerer at any point during Diablo, you're good to go.
Nice. From the Discord, Bacterial Cool name. Can we expect the summon tag to work with minion thorns? And any update on bristleback aspect working with minions?
I believe they should. I'd have to look into precisely minion thorns. I know that was a stat that your summons can inherit your thorns. That was a stat that I'd have to look into exactly bristleback aspect. But as a general matter, our philosophy on minion thorns and minions in general is if you think it should work, it should. The interactions of when you deal thorns damage, it should, if your minions are the ones triggering that thorns damage, it should count as if you had dealt it. I don't have that right in front of me, that particular interaction, but that is our philosophy. And if that's not happening, then we'll look to address it and improve that moving forward.
Cool. Thank you. Just had a question from AOE Alina. Are there plans to reduce visual clutter such as an opacity slider? I love Sorcerer and Spiritborn, but the visual effects are hindering my party.
I think that would probably be something that we would have to talk to the UI team about and the folks over in VFX. It's something that we've been grappling with throughout the life of Diablo because, there's so much happening, especially when you have an in-game build. And, if that gets so out of hand, like with new seasonal mechanics or new powers or legendary aspects that we create, it's something that we'll be taking a look at every time something like that comes up.
Yeah, I totally get it too, because when you're playing Spiritborn, you know what to look for as you're casting these abilities, but if you're just around it, then it can be a little overwhelming. Like when I have friends that come by that perhaps haven't played a Diablo game before, they're like, how do you know what to look at? It's like, you just gotta figure it out. But I could totally see how that could be a bit of a distraction on the screen. Ooh, Anjin-san. For the Q&A, how do Hydras work with the new summoning changes, and how does burning damage work in comparison to poison?
Yeah.
Another very technical question.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
you, Charles.
So luckily, I did include the Sorcerer Conjurations in the Summons update when I talked about them.
Yep.
But actually, for the most part, the Conjurations were already behaving this way. And that was part of the inconsistency that I kind of had glossed over, said, hey, they were inconsistent. And, since now we're in the more technical part, the inconsistency was that most of the Sorcerer Conjurations were already behaving the way that we wanted them to.
Right.
Where the damage was being attributed to the player, and it was actually the Necro minions and Shadow Clone and Druid companions primarily that were not as interactive as we would have liked.
Right.
So with that in mind, there's actually no real functional changes to the way that Hydra works with this. I don't believe Hydra was really touched, but it was actually used as kind of the example of how we wanted to implement and make the other summons work.
One question I do want to take really quickly that I've seen throughout chat, it was really hard to ignore. People are asking where Adam was. I think we just have to address it straight up. Adam Fletcher is no longer with Blizzard, which is really too bad. So you won't really be seeing him in a whole lot of other streams. So really sorry to disappoint chat, but you're stuck with him. Just kidding. He's been here the whole time.
Oh my God, it's Adam.
Just kidding.
We're just kidding.
Adam's staying forever.
Is Adam in the room with us right now?
Yeah.
Been here the whole.
Yeah.
Adam is.
To be clear, Adam has literally sat
Myszki.
2 feet to the left this entire time, just for
just
the
been
whole
there,
stream, just
ominously.
hanging out, checking out, watching chat. So, Adam is here to stay. Do not worry. All right. Went through that. All right. Love from Judith. Stash space is already a problem for anyone running multiple characters. Are there any plans to change armory loadouts so that they will not be stored in stash?
It's something, the armory is very new. We knew that the community really, really wanted the armory, and so we wanted to get out a version of it that we, was serviceable to get started. But we know it's a really, really important topic for the community, so it's something that we're going to continuously look at, and we're going to be looking a lot at feedback on the armory to make sure that it's as smooth as possible all the time. And to that end, we will be taking that into consideration. No concrete plans right now, but it's something, it's one of the topics that we have. And our ultimate goal is to make the armory just basically the most streamlined version of itself that it can be. So look for armory improvements in the future for sure.
Awesome, cool. And we got our last question for the Q&A. This is actually a two-parter for both of you. We have Poseidon Bobby was asking Charles, does your shirt glow in the dark?
You know, I haven't tried, but it looks like it
looks like
might.
it might.
It looks like it should. At
It
least
looks
if you
like
went
it
to like
might.
glow-in-the-dark bowling, it for sure would light up.
I am being told it doesn't, and I demand a refund. I would like to get a glow-in-the-dark Lilith shirt now.
What a ripoff, man.
And then on a similar vein, Aislinn, Radiobiology was asking, can you buy that sweater?
Can you buy this wonderful holiday Lilith's Christmas sweater? I don't know.
Adam is saying it's sold out.
It's sold out.
It's sold out. It's sold
for
out.
every year.
Sold out for
damn,
over a
okay.
year. This is a
RIP.
one of a kind.
We did have a different holiday sweater this past year, so there should, I mean, hopefully be another holiday sweater next year. No guarantees. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do see those holiday sweaters in the shop, get them before they're gone.
There's always like really wonderful merch online for
Yeah.
Diablo. I love taking a look at it. So if you like Diablo merch and you want something like this, definitely, check it periodically.
Definitely grab it. Well, yeah, that brings us to the end of the stream. I want to give a really big thank you to Aislinn, Charles, Dan Tangway. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
hanging out with us all the way in snowy Albany, New York. I hope it's not too terribly cold.
Not too bad.
Okay, glad to hear it.
I have to say that room looks freezing. It's like a
Yeah,
dungeon.
it does look very cold.
It's a little chilly, yeah. But I got my jacket on. I'm all right.
Good.
Nice. Glad to hear it. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. And Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, everyone, thank you for staying tuned and checking out everything that's to come with Season of Witchcraft. Like we mentioned throughout the stream, patch notes will be dropping after the stream. We did have our blog that launched on Tuesday as well. Also, I got to give a massive shout out again to our production team. There's a lot of faces you don't see that put a ton of blood.
Fajnie było. Ale no, nowości. Nowości to w tym dużo nie było. No zobaczymy, jak to zaraz będzie w tych patchnotesach. Także widzimy się później.